my name is Abby and welcome to this video about supporting students' sensory needs. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to start by looking at what are the 7 sensory systems. Alright, number 1, we have sight. So, sight in terms of objects and people, and this helps us define boundaries as we move through time and space. Okay, next one is touch. So environment and qualities of objects. So touch, the pressure, the texture, how hard something is, how soft something is, how sharp or dull it is, whether there's heat or cold or whether there's pain. So touch. Number 3, hearing. So sounds, whether they're loud, whether they're soft, whether they're high, whether they're low, whether they're near or whether they're far. Okay. Next we have taste. So types of taste, whether it's sweet, sour, bitter, salty or spicy. Next is smell. Types of smell, whether it's musty, putrid, flowery or pungent. Number 6, vestibular. So this is our balance. So where our body is in space and whether or not we or our surroundings are moving. So it tells us about the speed and direction of movement. So a student with sensory processing difficulties may have difficulty balancing and knowing where they are in their environment. And number 7 is proprioception. This is our body awareness. So where a certain body part is and where it is moving. So for example, me raising my hand and knowing that my hand and arm is above my head. Whereas someone with sensory processing difficulties may not have that awareness and may think that their hand is out in front of them. Okay, so that's our 7 sensory systems. Now, let's have a think. Percentage of people with sensory needs. Okay, I wonder if you think it's a certain proportion of the population. Maybe it's 9%, maybe it's 23%, 75%, or 100%. Well, if you thought 100%, you're correct. All of us have sensory needs and respond to sensory input in different ways. Now we're going to have a look at how we can profile students. So we could use something that's called a sensory profile. So this is a research-based assessment framework that reflects how sensitive a student is to different sensory input. So you find out and assess where the student is, whether they avoid or seek different sensory stimuli, and then from that information you can develop a sensory program. So a program looks specifically at what are the needs of the student and how can we best support them. So a sensory program is a specific plan to meet the individual needs of a student so they can develop self-regulation strategies, engage in social interactions, focus on learning and sustain attention in tasks more effectively. So in terms of the sensory support process, so firstly we would identify the student, we develop a sensory profile where we assess where their needs are, we would create a sensory program based on the results of the profile, and then we can implement the program. And recently the Department for Education has put out some planning in terms of sensory profiling and putting supports in place for students' needs. Okay, so let's have a talk about different sensory systems, whether there's an over response versus an under response. We can think about it like 2 cups. We have a small cup, which is oversensitive. We don't need much sensory input to fill the cup. Or on the other end, might be a big cup, so really undersensitive, and so you need lots of sensory input to fill the cup. Let's have a look at an example here. So I've got my lemon. Okay, I'm going to squeeze it into this glass. Okay, and have a think about while I'm doing this, what your cup would be like. Would you need lots of input? Could you drink this and be like, oh yeah, that's fine? Or do you have a small cup, you don't need much to fill this, and all of a sudden your sensory input is enough? All right, let's give it a go. Whoa, that's sour. So for me, it's very much a small cup. I do not need very much sensory input. So I guess we can look at it as a spectrum. So there may be some that have that small cup, so over-responsive, only need a little sensory input to fill the cup, and then we could go right down to the big cup, under-responsive and need lots of sensory input to fill the cup. And if we all did this together, if there were different groups of people doing this activity, we would all be standing at different places along that line. Okay, so that was taste. Let's think about sound. So with music, for example, if I was listening to some rock music, then I may say that I only need a small cup for this rock music, whereas someone else who may love that type of music, it really gets them into a good place for learning, they may be a big cup and they might like it really loud and playing in the background, and that helps them to focus. So with music as well, that can be another spectrum, which we're all on in different places. We can also be aware too that at different times of the day, we might be at different places. So for me, listening to pop music in the car on the way to work may be something where I like lots of input and I like to have it nice and loud. But sometimes when I've got into the car after work at night and I've heard the volume of the music, when I've turned my car on, I've gone, whoa, that's way too loud. I can't manage that noise. How was I listening to it so loudly in the morning? So I guess that shows really the sensory input that we want or need. It really fluctuates throughout the day, different times of the day, depending on different experiences that we've had too. So we all have different sensory needs. We will be under-responsive for some senses and over-responsive for others. This, like I've said, will also depend on the time of the day and the environment. And different input can help us focus and concentrate. And there may be little things that you and I do without even knowing, maybe like tapping our foot while we're listening to some information. Maybe it's moving our body in the chair to try and keep us focused and concentrated. With other students or with children that have sensory processing difficulties, they may not just go and do these things. And so we need to teach them some of these processes that will help them. So there are different activities you can complete to help your brain respond differently to sensory input. You can help your body feel calm and in control by getting the sensory input you need each day. So there are a range of different sensory profiles that are available. There are some available online that you can use. And then also there is the Department for Education assessment checklist that can be completed. And so here is an example of a sensory program. So this is something that I developed for a student. So it includes background information, it includes the sensory profile results, and then specific program information. In this profile, I've referred to the different engine level concepts. So whether the engine needs to be revved up or whether the engine needs to be brought back down to concentrate for learning. So there's strategies to slow his engine, strategies to support Joe's engine to just stay right, and strategies to rev his engine up. And so these can be referred to by staff working with this student. And this is something that can be developed with an OT, physio or speech input as well. So that's just a small introduction to supporting students with sensory needs. Thank you very much for listening.